South Education on May 7th. The committee is now going to get some testimony on just a small section of S 313. I would say that it's not crucial testimony in that we are not proposing to do anything other than ask the Agency of Education to provide recommendations on how we sort of marry the fact that we've moved from the high school completion program to the adult diploma program, which is complicated access to CTE for secondary age students that are in the adult diploma program, previously in the high school completion program. Anyway, I think this is just an opportunity for the two of you to kind of talk about the legal issues behind it, and sort of if you believe that between now and January something could be worked out, or not, if you feel very clear about the legal issues behind it. But anyway, I just thought it would be important for the committee to hear a little bit more about it. And I'll just say that what we have done in our proposal for amendment on 313 is to essentially get rid of the task force that was tasked with this job and move that into the work of the AOE in its list of recommendations to come back to the General Assembly with. So that's sort of the context of all of this. And anyway, we look forward to the two of you helping us understand this issue a little better.
Thank you so much. For the record, Emily Simmons, General Counsel at AOE. Mr. Chair, thanks for orienting me to the needs of the committee. That's really helpful, and it might make this pretty short. So we've, in the last few moments, submitted some written testimony for today. So I think that's going to represent information that the committee has already gone over. But again, Robin is here and would be the best person to walk you through that written testimony. I really like to cut to the chase. So, and the risk of being a little too bold, I think what you need to hear from me is this. We do have state law. I think the committee has looked at it, Section 1551A, that appears to entitle a student in any sense who does not have a diploma to enroll in CTE and have their district support that enrollment with funding. However, the adult diploma program relies on WIOA funding and a state match. And so to appropriately use that federal funding, we have to follow WIOA rules. And I think also, as the committee is aware, there is a WIOA eligibility rule, which limits eligible individuals to those who are not enrolled in post-secondary education. And so we do have sort of a conflict between our state law at 1551A and this WIOA rule. So in using these federal funds, this federal rule has to take precedence for this use of funds, right? We could structure the program in a different way, use only state funds like high school completion did, and not be beholden to these federal rules. But as the program is set up today, we do have to follow the rule that a student is ineligible for the adult diploma program, those WIOA funded activities, if they are enrolled in post-secondary education, which includes CTE programming. I went back and really examined this issue carefully with our staff and with Ruth Durkee on the CTE and Perkins side. And the Perkins definition of enrollment is a student who is accessing 2 hours or more CTE courses a day. And so the agency uses that 2-hour rule for enrollment definition across many aspects of CTE. So we're also applying that rule here. I think that might be new information in the conversation. So in that you're asking us to examine this further, come back to you with any recommendations. If there is some room to work here, I think it's within that 2-hour allowance. I think questions that cannot be resolved today, or what value is there? What value can we find in 2 hours per student per day that is not already covered by the work expected of our AEL providers with the funding they're already getting? Not weighing in one way or another on those questions. That's something that we're going to look into.
I'm just pausing here, looking through some of the testimony that you provided. But Robin, go ahead if you have more to add to this.
Thank you. My name is Robin Castle. I'm State Director of Adult Education and Literacy with the Agency of Education. I really appreciate this opportunity to answer your questions here today. So I do want to talk a little bit about the high school completion program, just to explain the difference between that and the adult diploma program very briefly. So the high school completion program was a reimbursement program. That was a district program. So those were not grant funds. And the high school completion program also allowed co-enrollment in secondary education and high school completion program. Those students who were co-enrolled in school and CTE centers are, as you know, providing secondary education in our schools. For those students, we did not report them on our federal reports. We did not use federal funds to support their services. They were receiving the high school completion program services. The difference is that now all of the money that the AEL providers are receiving to provide services is through the federal and state grant funds. And our state grant funds, which is for the adult diploma program, among other services, is also used as matching the federal funds, and therefore need to follow all of the federal rules. In section 945, which is the adult credential program, that includes the adult diploma program, that is also aligned now with eligibility in federal law. And that's, I want to say, is a good thing, because it also it makes very clear the purpose of the AEL program is to serve those who are not enrolled in secondary education. Makes clear the role of AEL providers and the services that they provide. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
How much are we talking about with federal dollars? I'm just wondering, if sort of not following the rules puts federal dollars in jeopardy, and we're talking about a small amount, that's all I'm curious about.
Sure. So I think we would need time to think about the implications of that and the amount of money. I can say that the state receives about $1 million each year in federal money for the AEL program. The implications for this would depend on when the law changed, and we need time to work through that. But basically, there's a maintenance of effort clause in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act in Title II, which is the AEL program. And that maintenance of effort clause says that our fiscal effort, the state's fiscal effort, cannot decrease by more than 10% each year. So it would depend on the amount of state grant match money that we reported for a fiscal year, and in the following year, would that amount be reduced because we had set aside a certain amount of state grant money not to use as match? So we would have to work through those numbers to know how much, and to avoid penalties and a violation of federal law. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Appreciate that. Could we talk about, maybe have you walk through the last paragraph of the testimony? I guess I'll just read it. With the repeal of the high school completion program, education funds previously allocated for the reimbursement program were shifted to the AEL state grant program. By shifting funds to a grant program, eligibility requirements for the ADP came into alignment with federal law that mandates that AEL program functions to serve those who are not enrolled in secondary school and who are at least 16 years of age. So that is to say, so the previous funding for high school completion is sort of converted into supporting adult diploma program, the adult diploma program, is that correct?
Yes, as grant money now. And previously it was a reimbursement program. It was not grant money, and we did not use any of the reimbursement money under high school completion program to match our federal grant because it was not grant money.
And the grant money is the same money that is now allocated to the AEL providers based on whatever criteria we last came up with?
Well, it's not the same amount, but
Right.
if you look at it, you know, the idea, I think, is that we used to have some education fund money that supported high school completion program. We don't have that program anymore. It was repealed. And now we do have some education fund money and general fund money that supports the adult diploma program and all of the other programs in section 945, and it's all grant money now.
Okay. Okay, I assume, can I assume that you do not have any objection to us adding to the list of tasks for the AOE to come up with recommendations for, adding this conundrum to that, even if your recommendation is status quo?
That's right. That's right. Yes, we support you including that language. We would also look at any changes to the program or the program as it exists now as what's best overall for the student population with an eye to retaining students in high school. Robin always reminds me, we need to be careful to look at whether we're accidentally creating incentives for students to unenroll from high school when otherwise that would be the best place where they could get the most services and complete their education and get their diploma. So we don't want to inadvertently create this like really attractive path that has students unenrolling from high school at a young age.
Yeah, I thank you for saying that. That's been one of my concerns, but also pointing out the fact that if a student wants CTE education, they can still get it. Yeah. It's just not going to be through an AEL provider. They just have to remain enrolled in high school.
Yes.
Right. Any other? I realize this is a highly technical issue, which we're not going to solve in the last couple of weeks here. Any other questions from the committee or need for more information?
Do you have any sense how often this comes up? Like,
So we had heard, or maybe just I had heard that we're talking about maybe a half a dozen kids across all the AEL kids, adult education, young adults across the state. Does that sound about right? I'm getting a nod from the lobbies for the AEL providers.
Right, and that's a number that they've identified, and they work with that population, right? That's what the grant funds are for, so no reason to second guess them on that estimate.
And what's the age rate or age cutoff for secondary CTE?
Not any.
I thought that, well, I guess
maybe at least 6.
you have to be enrolled in high school in order to participate.
Right.
So
Sorry, I thought you meant upper limit. There's no upper limit. The lower limit is 16.
there's no upper limit to be enrolled in high school. So therefore, there's no upper limit to be enrolled in CTE. Okay, I appreciate that. That actually makes sense. Think about it. All right, everybody. If there are no other questions, we'll thank our guests this morning, and hold there. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so the agenda, a little bit adjusted. As I've said repeatedly, we are at a time in the session where we're going to have big gaps. And so we are now gapped until the House floor. So use your time productively, and productively includes Leanne communicating with the folks at Hazen.
Were we
I've already sent
going to
that
hear
email.
about community school?
Oh, yes. Yeah, do you, the two of you feel like talking to us a little bit about what you learned on Friday?
Sure, I think
That'd
I
be
even
great.
still have the folder.
After for TBA, do you think we're coming back for anything? Or we don't know yet?
Yeah,
There's nothing really,
not just, unless you hear otherwise.
unless something goes awry in ways and means, and you want to hear about it?
So Representative Brown, Representative Brady went to the community schools conference on Friday, and I assume got a lot out of it.
Yeah, and so just a reminder, this whole community schools initiative, which is a national, it's a way of.
I'll give you the bag.
All right, okay.
I kind of like it.
Is a
Yellow
atmosphere. National, it's not movement, it's like model, sure, of more integrated supports in schools and more strong collaboration in the community. And there are 5 pillars that it is all built upon. We started as a state, we passed Vermont Act 67 in 2021. In the pandemic, or
Kind of in
the pandemic years. Using $10 million of some of the federal COVID funds to start the program, to create a competitive grant program in Vermont to stand up the model and support the model. And there was a cohort of 5 or 6 schools that were in that first tranche, and now they are in cohort 2. And those schools get quite a bit of technical support. They work closely with the agency and have done a wide variety of things. It's not like a one size fits all. The pillar, what I don't have right in front of me that I want is to find out.
Pillars here.
I know.
They're that little gear.
I will say, like, I leaned over, I think, to a couple different people during the day, and I was like, we could maybe just stop obsessing about, like, what's the mission and vision of education in Vermont? And this is me editorializing now. And it's the it's the pillars of community schools, because we're such a community-based state. We have, I think that's such an ethos, something that we've run into in this committee with all of our work related to Acts 73. So to me, the pillars are what are happening in a lot of schools anyway, certainly what I experienced as a teacher. And so to me, it's like, this is a forward, hopeful vision for Vermont schools in a lot of ways. And it has led to really amazing work happening in a lot of different schools and communities, and return on investment in ways of leveraging different funds, bringing different state agencies and fundings together in new and unique ways that are so good for kids and good for communities. I mean, the things that people are doing within the community, the biggest piece is that there's a community school coordinator that is, dedicated position in a building that is helping make all these connections. And that there's a lot of stuff and resources out there, but often things just aren't connected. And so these community schools coordinators really help kind of bridge that gap. But they're, doing everything from bringing seniors in to do literacy tutoring, to meal programs, to I think it was U32 did a whole series of evening classes that were put on by both students and community members on different topics like bike maintenance. And but it filled many purposes, and that it brought people in the community together. It gave students some experience, some job experience, and leadership experience that they can use. on a resume of like having led these kind of workshops. They had to do a lot of the work in organizing it. So really very real world skills, but connecting to the community. And it was hosted at UVM. I think what is great to see is that so we had 10 million originally. That has led to 2 cohorts. We have not added any more state funding. We added a bit more 3 years ago, like $1 million. But the state funding has essentially ended there, and we don't have, again, editorializing, I think it's unfortunate we don't have a clear commitment to it, because it's clear a ton of amazing work is happening and good things are happening in schools and communities. And when we don't have consistency of funding, and we've heard a lot from the field about this, but we could end up wasting money, because then all this good work has happened and there isn't the money to follow through on it. It was fortuitous in that Senator Sanders was able to get a federal earmark and directed it through, took a lot of work, but ended up directing that through UVM to continue some of this work. So there has been some continued financial support. Of course, federal earmarks are one-time things as well. So we face the same challenges in terms of kind of the predictability of the funding to continue the work. They are continuing to seek. I was most struck, I think, by kind of the overlap with healthcare and how much is happening in terms of working within that, like bringing healthcare providers into schools. Not saying school budgets are paying for healthcare providers, but it's a physical space where those connections can happen. And UVM is doing some great work, I think, in reaching across Vermont, getting out of the Burlington area and sending social work and social worker interns into schools for a year to do intensive internships and be able to provide services to students. They're doing some more with some of their family practice clinics and having interns and future doctors working in starting to work in some rural communities that then might have an interest also in staying in rural communities. So there's a real kind of like healthcare overlap that I think is emerging in a lot of the work. I left thinking, again, great reminder of all the amazing things happening in schools, and that we often just get so enamored with like the negatives that we forget really what's happening, and narratives matter. The way we think and talk about schools really matters. That this sort of undercurrent of thriving schools lead to thriving communities, and thriving communities lead to thriving schools. This interconnection, was shown in so many different ways, and the importance of funding sustainability and what we lose when we do lots of new initiatives, fund them, stop, don't see things through. A perennial challenge, I think, and part of the challenge of being a part-time citizen legislature. But
Did as the funding dwindles, was there a discussion about how many districts that are currently within the cohorts are taking off the work, just putting it in their budget?
so we didn't get into that in detail, I would say.
Yeah. But we could definitely ask those 5 schools, like the 5 initial
original
cohort, like
groups,
how are they sort of transitioning away from?
Want to answer that?
Split premise into 120.
I'm only putting you on the spot, but if you feel like answering that.
Virgin was one of the.
And so we were talking about community schools with Virgin's, Union Elementary being one of the originals.
Yeah.
As the sort of funding for community schools from your initial grant dwindles, is your school district sort of absorbing those costs?
As best we can.
Yeah. Have you had to leave part of the initiatives behind as a result, or not yet?
Not yet. I mean, we've been like, I don't want to say cooking the books, but just trying to figure out how we can do more with less and keep the same things. And so do we restructure it so somebody's doing part of that, or we're splitting it up, or so we're trying to hold it all together in ways that still makes sense and is helpful, but obviously more money would be helpful.
Yeah.
But you do with what you can. But yeah, it's an important aspect of what's built into the culture, and want to keep it as much as possible.
I could have Tony scan these and we could email them out to the committee. There is a whole page of recommendations that,
Oh, yeah.
recommendations for us, policy recommendations, state level recommendations, and then kind of a helpful chunk around data infrastructure, like how do we collect data? And then there's something about integrating, like how can we at the state level work to integrate multiple funding sources across state agencies so that we can sustain this work. With Rosie Kruger was there from the, and she was, I think, excited to hear that so many schools are doing like community meal based and just doing a lot of food insecurity work. But it was definitely clear to her, I think, that not everyone is necessarily aware of where they can go to access funding that is available. So it needs to definitely be a lot more information sharing so that things can be.
Yeah, there were
leveraged.
folks from Vermont Department of Mental Health, there were Agency of Education. And there's continue to be silos just in state government, I think, that are
Yeah.
make things challenging. And that was, I think everybody was a coalition of the willing there, believing and wanting to do good things for kids and communities, but clearly still a lot of work to do to break down some silos and get a little bit more collaboration.
I had a quick question about the funding piece and, I don't wanna lose the good work that's been done in this state for lack of funding. And was there any thought as you were having these conversations and sitting through this conference about how a CISA might help support the
I
work?
thought of that. I almost asked in one of the open question things, but I didn't know if that would be
We
too
talked
much
about
in the
that.
weeds, but potentially you could see some, like, could you have, maybe a community schools coordinator at a CISA level? I think it depends on the community areas and the things that you're trying to integrate, but yeah, I wondered.
I wasn't here in this committee.
Yeah.
When I was here, wasn't in this committee when the law was passed, and it was 21, I
Yeah.
looked. But this is a really powerful movement, it
Yeah.
seemed to me at the time when we passed the law, and it remains that way. And as time has gone since 2021, it seems very short period of time, but a lot has changed. And the decline in enrollment
Yeah.
and the fact that this is really focused on rural schools, and I wanna say rural schools meaning every school in Vermont, essentially. I think I'm not trying to say it's only the most rural schools. It's pretty much could have an impact on all of our schools in Vermont. It just feels really important to me that we elevate this law that we passed and the initiatives within it now, quickly, because we are in transformation and this is a great direction and the needs are growing. So I
Tell you where I see CISA is playing a role at a very basic level, transportation.
Sure.
I mean, you just think about a coordinated fleet of vans to get kids to CTE because they can't go there, or doing what needs to be
Yeah.
done, but in a more coordinated fashion.
And that is like in, North Country, like having, I don't know that they use the community schools grant for the vans, but the community schools coordinator uses, they move kids all over some pretty far distances to get middle schoolers from all these different schools together to get, youth councils stood up. That is critical for a lot of, I think, great things they're doing, actually reaching kids.
But I also add on to that, the connection to community is
Yes.
what's going to succeed.
Right.
That's going to have our schools succeed, right? Right now, there's more and more challenge around this conversation, around transformation, without community support.
Yeah.
And we heard this
Yeah.
very clearly after Act 73 passed, especially, and Vermonters started reaching out and having a say and feeling very strongly. And I, as sitting as a school board member, right now, the need for communication with the community is growing.
Yeah.
And so this connection of community schools, I just think it's really exciting. And I'm really glad that the two of you went to this conference and were able to go. Oh, three of you.
Great.
Sorry, I didn't know you were there.
Okay.
You had a very busy day that day, so I'm impressed that you went. Thank you for going. But just think it's really critical. We need to keep this conversation alive.
And it just, again, this materializing, but reminder, really a lot of very dynamic, incredibly motivated, passionate education leaders and teachers and school nurses around the state. I mean, if you want to have your bucket filled that the sky is not falling, and there's a lot of really good stuff happening. Holy cow, the things that people are pulling together, putting on, the principals that are driving food to kids' houses in the evenings, the bus driver that brought students from Hazen stood up and spoke. It was really, really powerful. So there is a lot of good work happening, and people are working really hard in schools, and doing innovative things to keep kids engaged in school and to get communities. It is such a, it's in the title, the community. It's about community. So there, it was for me okay, this is sort of the idea of regional middle and high schools, but this sort of breaking down school isn't just, 8 to 2 reading, writing, and arithmetic, but also, and it doesn't mean it has to be in school budgets, but it can be so many community supports, connections, opportunities, new things, different things, and different uses of buildings.
That's
I
another.
find that all in a way a little bit discouraging, because what you're really saying is schools are really stepping up in great innovative ways.
Yeah.
To fix the ills of society
Oh,
that
yeah,
aren't
basically.
any of their fault.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, basically.
But the
Not
communication
basically.
around that is what's so important. I mean, we need to be able to say, we can be a resource. What does the community need? What do the kids need to be educated in this community? And I think community stepping up in that way might change some of the underlying laws and focus. Thank you for being.
All right, thanks for the report back.